So I get asked, especially when people see the information about not using exposure therapy, people often ask, well, what is it that you do? If you don't do exposure, then what is it that you do to help clients? So, firstly, there's a couple of elements to that. The actual path that I take each client through is unique. It is unique to them because whilst the phobia in itself will have some common elements, of course, the exact reason why that individual has developed emetophobia will be different to the next person. And although they may also experience some common symptoms, some shared experiences, the exact way that it affects their life is going to be slightly different to the next person and the one before. So I work with somebody completely bespoke. I create a program that is tailored for each individual. It's looking at how did the phobia form? That's what I'm really interested in. How and why was the phobia created? And if you look at some of my other videos, you'll see how I explain why we create a phobia. And so based on that, I do not do any exposure. Personally, I don't advocate it for several reasons, which I won't go to particularly into in this video. But in my experience, a lot of people also find it, apart from being completely unpleasant, it actually doesn't seem to resolve the phobia and actually can kind of dig it and drive it underground. So instead of exposure, what I am looking for is the reason, as I said, for the phobia forming. So therefore, all of my support, all of my therapy, all of my methods that I use are actually focused on looking at the cause, the root cause, if you like, the real reason. So we spend less time looking at the symptoms, for example, and we're looking at the why and the when. So within that kind of process, knowing that that's my goal for every individual, I use two methods. One is called RTT, which stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy. And that is a therapy style that utilizes hypnosis, but just as a component, a smallish component, just because it's the most effective and the quickest way to get to the part of our mind that actually has created the phobia, and that is the subconscious. Now, if a phobia was created by our conscious, we could simply think ourselves out of it and over it. And obviously, knowing that people haven't been able to do that, that is further proof that the phobia exists in our subconscious. So within RTT, I use hypnotherapy to get straight to the subconscious mind, to explore the whys, the whens, and we're looking at the perceptions, we're looking at the beliefs that somebody formed, and they are going to be typically beliefs that they formed very early on, because emet forms typically between the ages of 4 and 8. So those are going to be very young memories, young moments, young perceptions. And through RTT, it uses a blend of, as I say, hypnotherapy, CBT, but not the exposure element, NLP, and also neuroscience, proven neuroscience, to look at sort of those beliefs that are driving the phobia, that are kind of fueling it, if you like, keeping it going, often for years and years and, even decades in many cases. And we're really honing in on that. So that is RTT, as I say, one of the methods that I use. And those sessions can be a couple of hours long. And following those sessions, I will look at what's come up, what the subconscious says is relevant. And then I will create a bespoke hypnosis audio that the client then goes on to listen to on their own. And they will listen to that for around sort of 3 weeks. At that point, we would have regular check-ins, and then we would obviously assess the next session. And the second method that I use is called ACH, and that stands for Advanced Conversational Hypnosis. And that is a slightly more organic method. It feels like a conversation, it looks like a conversation, but actually it's far, far more than that. So it's far more than talk therapy, but it uses the organic moments, which we all do throughout the day, of flipping between our conscious mind and our subconscious. Because I know that whenever somebody is giving me an answer that they've kind of just said again and again, they've said it with practice, and therefore their conscious mind is actually speaking in those moments. And because, as I said about the formation of a phobia, I know that those conscious answers, they're kind of the fluff. They're not the relevant stuff, because if they were the meaty stuff, then the client would have been able to resolve their own problem. So I'm looking for the subconscious answers. And through those two methods, I will use a variety. For some people, they may particularly resonate with ACH, and that's what most of the sessions will be. For others, they may particularly resonate with the RTT, and therefore that's what their bespoke program will be mostly made of. However, I always use both. It's just the kind of proportions, if you like, of the two methods will vary. Alongside that, I'm also there for sort of check-in support, sort of answering. I don't do any reassurance, however. So reassurance is something that keeps people stuck in their phobia. So that is something that I don't provide. I am empowering people through our sessions to not look for that reassurance, to learn to look within for the answers. Because, of course, once we start to peel away the layers of the phobia, and once people start to let go of it, they're actually finding that they're having to learn. They're learning who they are. They're learning how they feel. They're learning what their opinions are, what their new beliefs are going to be, what their reactions would be as a person without that phobia being there. So I guide them through that process. And I use some elements of CBT in terms of sort of retraining, rewiring the mind, if you like. And we use the proven science of neuroplasticity, which is knowing that we actually can change the way that we think. So just because we've historically thought a certain way and behaved a certain way for a long time, neuroplasticity proves that we can actually change that, and we can bring in new beliefs, form new habits. So I also provide people with tools, with tips, with practical solutions as to how they can move forwards once they let go of the phobia. And this combination, this package that I take people through, it varies from person to person, but the nature of the sessions, the fact that we're dealing with the subconscious, sessions are very relaxed in terms of their timescale, their duration. They can be an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours long, although they don't feel that. They feel like a bit like when you go to sleep, you kind of close your eyes and wake up and 7-8 hours has passed. It's a bit like that with the sessions. They feel really quick. So that's the duration. And then in terms of how long I will work with somebody, again, that's going to be dependent on them, on how each session goes, on how long they take to process things, and just their individual uniqueness as to how they let the phobia go. But typically, I will take somebody through a program for about 3 months.